So today we're going to take a look at the Temple Mount, the Temple, and the Mount of Olives and the relationship between them. So Jerusalem is surrounded by mountains, okay? There's a little mountain ridge that's on the east of Jerusalem, that there are several peaks on that. Then there is the Mount of Olives, which is sort of right in the middle of that, and the Temple Mount is across the Kidron Valley from the Mount of Olives. The Mount of Olives is higher than the Temple Mount. So this is north, and this is east, south, and this is west. The door of the temple faces east, okay? It faces east. And there are two altars associated with the temple, and there is an altar over here on the Mount of Olives. So the altar of incense is the first altar, and that's in the holy place, and that's where incense is offered, and it represents our prayers going up to God. And the second altar is the altar of burnt offering, and that's right outside the opening of the temple. So just outside the temple, there is the laver where priests wash, and there is the altar of burnt offering. So that's where offerings are made. Now, in order for things to be purified, whether it's those things in the temple or people to be purified of ritual uncleanness, for example, if you touched a dead body, you couldn't participate in Passover. You had to be made ritually pure in order to do that. And the way that people and things were made ritually pure was through the water of purification, where you took the ashes of a red heifer that had been burned and then mixed with living or running pure water, and then just a little bit of that would cleanse you and purify you so that you could participate in Passover, for example, or so that you could be clean. And this is particularly if you touched a dead body. So the Mount of Olives is where that third altar is. It was at the summit of the Mount of Olives. And what would happen is the priests would take a perfect red heifer, which is a female cow, it's before they've had a baby, and they would cross over a bridge over the Kidron Valley, and there are a lot of graves in here, so they would cross over a bridge to make sure they didn't touch any of those graves. They would take the heifer up to the third altar, which was outside the gate, was outside the camp. In order to be outside the camp, you had to be 2,000 cubits away from the temple. And that's the equivalent of a Sabbath day journey, or it's about 3,000 feet. All right, so it's pretty far. Okay. There was a wall that was built around the temple, but on the eastern side of the temple, the wall was shorter than around the other parts of it, because when the people came up here to offer this red heifer, they had to be able to see in through the door of the temple for that. And so the priest would go up here, would offer the red heifer, and everything was burned, including the blood. Nothing about this sacrifice was removed. Usually you emptied the blood out of a sacrifice when you offered it over here as a burnt offering, but here with the red heifer, you killed it. Everything, every part of it was burned down to ash, and then it was mingled with cedar wood and hyssop and a red cord or something. I forget exactly. Anyway, this was where it was burned, and according to tradition, there's only been 9 red heifers burned, and the 10th one will be offered up when Messiah comes. So the Mount of Olives is where that third altar is. Now, where it is right now, we don't know, but it's at the summit of the Mount of Olives. And remember, when David passed over the summit, there was an altar up there. There was a place where he worshiped God. And this was before the temple was built. The symbolism of the red heifer, that in order for any of this stuff to work, any of the sacrifices, the purification of the temple itself, the purification of the priests, the purification of anything, before you can do this, you have to do this. Okay, you have to go outside where the temple is, outside the gate, outside the camp, and you have to offer up this unblemished, perfect red heifer, and then the ashes of that could cleanse people from impurity. Okay, so this is just a brief overview. I'm just giving you a sort of a visual here so you can imagine how this works. In the next video, we're going to be going into the life of Christ and all the things that happened to him on the Mount of Olives and how that is highly significant of things pertaining to the red heifer. And so till the next video, I pray you'll have a very blessed day.